Imagine if you had a story that once you wrote it, you discovered it was real. But then when you tried to share it with other people around you, they would tell you, you're wrong, you're crazy, this is impossible, it's not real. What would you do? And how would you share your story with the world? Whew. Okay, guys. Alright. In this episode, I want to tell you the story about trying to tell my story, where the struggle has been something that's kept me down for a long time. But if I overcome this struggle, then you might see what Torus Link is really about. Dun dun dun! Ever since I was a child, I had known I'd wanted to put myself into a story. I didn't know how. I might have been a cat girl at some point, but I knew that I wanted to show myself in a comic somehow. When I was 12, I came up with these characters that I absolutely loved. I knew they would have something to do with the elements of fire, water, earth, and air. And I knew they would equally have something to do with a magical other world. But while I didn't know all of the details, the one thing I did know was at the heart of this story, this was about relationships. This was about love. And this was about two sides needing to be reunited, the masculine and the feminine. For years, I worked on this story, keeping it to myself throughout middle school, high school, and college, mainly because I just didn't have the details fleshed out. All the same, I would draw these relationships between these guys and myself, mainly as a way of escape, because all throughout that time, I was severely depressed, reclusive, shy. I wouldn't show who I was. I thought I needed to be everything else that other people wanted me to be in order to please them. And equally along these lines, in my own relationship life, I was liking people who were straight up toxic, to put it at best. People who ignored me, who selfishly took things, and at one point were so insecure that they put my art down to try to raise their art up in the eyes of our shared professor. And unfortunately, I reflected these toxic patterns in my own characters as well. And I figured if this was what I was going to reflect in my own story, I didn't need it. So I gave up on what would be Torus Link in 2009. By that point, the events of Torus Link had occurred, where a call came from me, come back to me, leading me to see that I had a counterpart of my own. This occurrence was so significant, so crazy, that I knew I could not ignore this call, even if I couldn't tell other people about this because they wouldn't believe such a thing could occur. I had to accept it. So I answered the call, and he led me to Scotland. And when I got there to study, I came to see that the people I drew when I was 12 turned out to be real people. Once I figured this out, more than rekindling just my story, I realized I had to let people know about this crazy connection. No way could this thing stay quiet. Look, we're connected. Look at what this can do. Look at what sharing your real story that's closest and truest to you can do. Don't give up on what you love, people. But at the time, the people closest to me, they told me, this can't be true. You're crazy, you're wrong, and someone I really trusted turned their back on me as well. That really broke me down. Just the same, my fire didn't die, but I thought that if I want Torus Link to succeed, I must not talk about these psychic connections. Unfortunately, in doing so, I blocked out Torus Link's very core, a masculine side and a feminine side reuniting via a bond that goes deeper than just what's on the surface. And so for the next 5 years since graduating, I tried and tried to put out Torus Link and continued to fail. people would ask me, what is your story about? And I would tell them, it's about people with elemental powers and artists trying to achieve their dreams. Or it's about artists who will save the world with their art powers. Or it's a semi-autobiographical story and, yeah. Please go read it. Yet, all along this struggle, people would reflect to me their own aspects of the things that make up Torus Link, where I began to see a tie between struggling to express one's truest self, whether through art or through any pursuit of something that they love to do, sharing what they really feel and experience, even if it makes them vulnerable, and most of all, a very clear connection between men and women trying to relate. Question is, how did this all tie? How did I sell this? I knew I wanted to show this through Torus Link, through my story of an artist and a psychic weaver and a photographer and a spray painter and a musician and a princess and a roboticist and a wayward soldier. All of this was there, but without ever being able to say this to others, how we're connected, I could see that this couldn't show. Now I'm at the stage where, lacking resources and lacking enough support, I literally can no longer continue beyond this episode that you're watching. I just don't have the means to keep a roof over my head, trying to keep up Torus Link and doing all that I'm doing to make this work. Except for one last thing I can try. Earlier this month, I asked 4 dear friends of mine if they would volunteer to answer some questions. Those questions varying depending on whether they were female or male. None of my friends knew anything about what I would ask anyone else in this, nor did anybody see anyone else's answers. Case in point, mwahaha. Next, I asked my patrons on Patreon to give me things that they wanted empathy for, anonymously, either from the opposite sex or literally anything they wanted empathy for. And just between patrons and volunteers alone, already the parallels were just showing up right from the start. It's just not my desire or drive. It does not make me mentally ill or bitter, and especially it does not make me less of a woman.
I'm not like crazy or insane or whatever.
More than just us syncing up with the clothes we wear, or talking about the same kinds of topics without realizing we're doing it. It's that even if we deny these feminine emotions and these spiritual connections being a thing, we're still showing the same things tied to each other. And when we do see these parallels, we get to see what's really hurting everybody, no matter what side we're on. Let me show you what I mean.
So I do want to give a huge thank you to Yasmine for even having me on here. I couldn't believe that she wanted to even hear my opinion because I'm a huge supporter of hers. I love her videos. You guys should go down and subscribe because she very much deserves it. It's wonderful content and I love it. So thank you, Yasmine, for having me on here. I can't wait to dive into these questions. When she first asked me about this stuff, I was like, ooh, what am I gonna say? But what am I gonna say? Huh.
You can say whatever you want, and if you want me to cut out anything, just tell me I want you to cut this out, okay?
Okay, so what was the question?
So...
Hello, I'm Ken, founder of the Silence Noise, artist, speaker, person that does a lot of different things.
Hello, this is Fancy Fatal answering the question, hardest thing to experience being a woman that men may not understand.
So the first question is, what is something you would like in general for the opposite sex to understand about you?
So the first question I was asked is, what is something that I would like empathy for that I feel I do not receive empathy for in general as a man?
The question was, what would you want people to know about dealing with or interacting with people with mental health issues?
And the first thing that came to mind for me when reading this question is that I believe that many, many men in this country are facing a mental health crisis. Let me explain what I mean by that.
I am happily engaged. I'm going to be married in September, and I just want good companionship with friends. It doesn't mean I want to get in your pants.
it becomes so easy to become isolated. And I think most men, again, myself included, don't necessarily have the type of emotional support structure that many women either have in their families or that they develop in their friendships or their close relationships.
I used to joke that we treated each other better than we treated our husbands. My friend and I were making a special effort to communicate clearly with each other, check in, and make sure that the other person was happy and heard, because we were, one, in a 3-year lease, and two, we wanted to protect our friendship.
I like having friends who are girls because girls think differently than guys do, and sometimes I want that other perspective.
Back to perspective that women have,
I am a very tall woman.
it is a constant need to review your actions, anticipate how you will be perceived by everyone around you.
I constantly have to make snap judgments of my posture, my gait, who I'm meeting the eyes of, who I'm avoiding, everything.
Because women are held generally in most cultures at a higher standard than men.
And this requires me to either politely ignore them,
They may be poised, they may be polite,
or do a smile or nod.
they have to do many things. It is, if they are controlled, they have to maintain that control, and if they don't, they become irrational.
Here's the problem with that, is that many men, myself included, are reluctant to seek help. They're reluctant to go to therapy. They're reluctant to ask for help for their problems.
Sometimes the stigma of having mental health issues gets to people, and we don't get that particular treatment as we should.
I'd like people in general to be able to have more empathy for us women who do not desire to have kids.
I'm part of that mental health stigma, like I've been labeled as that.
No, we do not hate children.
Along the lines of like crazy,
We are not afraid of motherhood,
insane,
and we do not want to bring the end of the human race by refusing to reproduce.
sick, ill, whatever.
Most of all, we are not broken.
It was very difficult because in some ways it's kind of admitting that you're broken, especially amongst a lot of men that I've known. Those aren't real things, or they're PC diagnoses, or whatever they are. They're something that you should be able to just get over.
He will say, cheer up, or quit worrying. Oh, okay, wow. Thanks for clearing that up for me.
Men will always justify what is happening to women because they see it through their male perspective.
Sometimes being openly mocked for seeking help.
Oh, I don't think it is as bad as you think it is.
I know many men, people that I wasn't particularly close to, who would be made fun of or joked about for going out and seeking help for these types of issues, for depression and anxiety especially.
So another question that she had was, what do I feel as a man that I do not get enough empathy for? Anxiety.
Seems like I've been living with high anxiety levels all my life since it began, and I have to learn how to live with it.
It's not so easy for me to just go to a show or go hang out or go to this party
I wish that people wouldn't take everything for granted.
or do anything that really breaks my routine.
People with anxiety problems cannot always follow others into small routine things.
Now I get it, not everybody knows who I am and that I suffer from anxiety, but I think that the people who really know it don't empathize enough about the anxiety.
And what's important for me, especially, when I'm in a friendship or a relationship with someone, is, to feel embraced despite those issues, to feel understood, to not have to deal with being mocked or being shamed.
Which is why in all these different dynamics, they won't understand that situation until a similar one is set upon them. Most at least. That's not to say that some people cannot have empathy in different walks of life.
I'm just like everyone else. I'm a student. I have a job. And I eat, I sleep, So, yeah.
In comparing my own struggle, having a story that was near and dear to me about relationships, to losing that story, to seeing an indisputable link between being a woman and being othered, I see that it's a universal ache to not receive understanding or empathy for your pain, while equally acknowledging that such feminine things as having social support structures, having empathy, having relationships that are not just about getting into someone's pants, and having that understanding and being able to be open about your vulnerabilities and seek help. These things are suppressed and considered weak, where traditionally it's considered masculine to not even have these aspects. It's when we allow this feminine emotional link that does exist between people that we begin to restore empathy for everyone. But as long as we keep blocking it, it can't come. Hence, Torus Link. Help me continue Torus Link by supporting it. If I can reach 150 patrons on my Patreon, this will give me enough resources that I can continue Torus Link the comic and take it off hiatus. If you join at just $3 a month, you can have the opportunity to see your own parallels shown in my videos. If you join at higher tiers, you can get bonus Torus Link artwork, access to hidden scenes, and a closer look at my story behind the story of Torus Link. Most of all, like, subscribe, share, and read Torus Link. Thank you guys so much, and I hope to see you soon.